another episode of Splash Considerations. My name is Justice De Los Santos, San Francisco Giants beat reporter for the Bay Area News Group, San Jose Mercury News, East Bay Times, whatever you want to call us, as long as you read, as long as you subscribe. And speaking of subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on Apple, follow us on Spotify. A lot of things in this world cost a lot of money, but following, subscribing, that remains free 99 and just a moment of your time. I'm now joined by a television superstar, a best-selling author, and most importantly, somebody who's wrong about just how low FIP should go. Alex Pavlovic, welcome back to the show.
Wait, what's Mason Miller's FIP right now? Do you have it
It's
updated?
still negative. It's when I
Okay.
checked it last night, it was negative 0.35, even though he has allowed an earn run. Although it was kind of weird because there was like a ball that went foul. They picked it up, they called it fair, whatever. But it's still negative as of right now.
I was not watching was it Padres who? Cubs?
I would
Padres
have been
Cubs on a Monday night?
I would have been very concerned if you were watching Padres
Yeah,
Cubs on a Monday night.
I was not. Okay,
But
what do you got? What do you got, Justice?
what, that is still negative?
No, I'm putting you on the spot. I'm ready to go.
You ready to go? Okay. I thought you were gonna
Are
at
we
least give
arguing about Mason Miller or are
I
we
thought you wanted to give your take because that's what you texted me. You said I want to come on your podcast, tell you why this shouldn't be a thing.
Oh, I said next time I come on your podcast. So,
This is next
um
time.
this is next time. It shouldn't be a thing. It shouldn't I'm looking at his Fangraphs page right now. And it goes ERA, xERA, FIP, xFIP. And so they are all lined up so that they're all supposed to be better versions of ERA next to it. And one of them goes negative when you can't go negative with ERA. It's pretty stupid. That's my take.
I said this to Shayna last time. I disagree. I think it's cool. Baseball numbers are inherently dumb. And I just like it. It's funny. Anyway,
This
let's
is a dumber version of we just have a negative in the middle of his whole career and all these his xFIP is 0.04. Great. That tells me he's been awesome. And we have a negative here. So, okay, that's my FIP rant.
agree to disagree, agree to
Okay.
disagree. So Giants took 2 or 3 from the Marlins. They're about to face a Phillies team that just fired their manager. I guess the question I
hmm
want to start off with is, have you ever covered a series where the opposing team fired their manager right before? I know that the Giants fired Cap like at the very tail end, but I think that's a kind of different set of circumstances than what's happening here. But anything comparable to rolling into a series and their manager just not being there?
Yeah, I've covered a series where the Giants fired their manager. I maybe I don't I this is year 15 for me. So like maybe somewhere along the line in September we got somewhere where someone fired their manager, but not in April. I don't remember that. I don't know what it means. We'll see what it means. I would always, I guess this is a very small thing. I'd rather face a team that's about to fire their manager and is playing such bad baseball that they're about to fire their manager than the one that, just got a wake-up call. But no, I don't think I've been in this situation.
We're going to be talking to Charlotte Varnes at The Athletic on the back end of this episode for more on that. And kind of, I don't want to say old friend, old nemesis, I guess. Don Mattingly is going to be the new manager of the Phillies. But before getting into some of the Giants related stuff, and I mentioned this to you, I want to take more of a larger scale view with more than a month into the season being completed. But we obviously just had the Brandon Bell celebration day. I know that you're coming out with the interview you had with him this upcoming Thursday. You had a great story about him. You covered his whole career. So now that the belt wars are kind of officially over and it's pretty clear that there's a winning side. Just when you had that opportunity to watch the celebration day, kind of maybe reflect on his career, just how do you evaluate his career overall, his legacy in San Francisco, and maybe just how much fun it was covering him? Because it seemed like he's able to get off a one-liner or two.
Yeah, the Belt Wars are never going to be over because I think even like tweeting out videos of him celebrating with his family, there's occasionally a response there from someone who's like, "Why is this happening?" And I'm like, "Okay, like one of the best players in franchise history. You can deny it, but he just is. Like you go by any advanced metrics, you just go by longevity, 2 titles, whatever you want to go by. Unless you wanted him to hit 35 homers and drive in 100 runs every year, then yeah. So I don't think that will ever end. There's always going to be people on the other side of that. Funniest player I've ever covered, like without a doubt. I I had so much fun doing the interview with him, which will be out on Thursday's Giants Talk, because it's just there's probably like 10 or 15 jokes just stuck in there, and I had maybe like 12 questions. So like every single time he gets a chance to get a joke off or take a shot at someone, he does. And it's subtle for the most part. So, or a lot of it is subtle. And I just he was just a really good player, and I think we take for granted sometimes those guys, and we spent the first 2 weeks of the season trying to figure out why a Giants first baseman couldn't catch a throw to first. And yeah, it'd be like once a year when Belton and Crawford combined on an error. And I mean they had other errors, but it was like noticeable. I can remember off the top of my head like certain games, like one in Washington, games where like a Crawford throw got away from Belt. And I just think that should be part of his legacy. And I know Brandon Crawford would say the same thing, and Joe Panic would say the same thing. And they don't have those gold gloves without the guy at first base scooping everything. And sometimes we take for granted how good, I think similarly we've taken, maybe people have an understanding now or in the years since of like, oh yeah, every ball to short, that was an out. Like every single ball to short was an out. So for the most part. And yeah, that would be my take on him is it was just so solid for so long that maybe people forget sometimes to realize how good it is.
I do want to make a quick aside because a lot of people were pointing out that Brandon Crawford wasn't there, but he was also being celebrated in Double A at the same time. Kind of odd how that scheduling kind of turned out, but
Yeah.
this was not an intentional thing where Brandon Crawford was deciding to not be in San Francisco for that day. But transitioning from the past to the present, we're more than a month into the season now. Giants are 13 and 15. They won three straight series and hasn't been boring. It has not been boring at any juncture from the very pretty much beginning of spring training up until
Hasn't it
now.
times been
Eh,
eh, there was about a week of games there where they were scoring two
mm,
runs where that was a little
overall, I think there's always been something to talk about,
yeah.
generally speaking, like from opening day and night, the Chapman thing in San Diego. We've got a lot of beer showers, got a lot of beefs,
Yeah.
got a lot of good, got a lot of bad. And so just overall, again, we're a month into the season. I still don't have like a firm grasp of this team yet. I've wondered if that was true. Like I was trying to like go back and forth with myself. I don't really have like a firm grasp of like where this team is at. Just for you, 28 games in, just what do you think of this team overall?
Um, it's a good question. I just wrote a long story this morning about the bullpen, and it's been the best unit on the team for 3 weeks now. And it was this isn't you and I saying it, and we were. This is people within the organization saying it in spring training. I'm sure you had these conversations. They were worried about the bullpen. Like, so they figured at some point it'd come together. It's come together quickly. Now, the other thing I looked up last night that I was surprised by is they've thrown the second fewest innings of anybody over those 3 weeks. So even like, as bad as some of the Hauser starts have been, he's still going like 4 innings. He's not going an inning and two-thirds. Logan's still going 6 or 7 every time out. Roop has become that guy. So Ray pretty automatically 5 or 6 innings. So it's allowed him to be a little bit more flexible and allowed Tony to kind of be aggressive with that bullpen usage and not have to hang guys out to dry. So I guess that's a surprise to me. In general, Henry Schulman taught me this years ago. He's like 40 games is like the first big marker for me in a season. And maybe that's meaningless, but it's like get through a quarter of the season and kind of look around and see where guys are at. So I'm like kind of looking at Rafi Devers and going, this is bad, but also 2 weeks ago we were saying that about Jung Hoo Lee and Casey Schmidt, and I think it's a streaky group of guys, and so there's going to be some real lows. Um, there's going to be some real highs for guys as well. What they haven't done yet, which I think they need to do at some point soon, is like run off like 7 out of 8, because there's also going to be a stretch where this group goes. We've just seen it from this group of hitters. Like they're very capable of scoring 2 runs a game for 2 weeks. So. Yeah, it's a streaky group. I don't really have a full handle on. I think they're about who I thought. I mean, I think I predicted 84 wins at the start of the year, so they're not too far. I mean, they're under 500, but they're not 6 games under. So it's about kind of what I thought, just maybe in a different way, because I really thought they're going to blow some games early, and they did blow a couple games early, but I thought they're going to blow more games early. And maybe the starting pitching and the lineup would get them over the top. It's been the opposite. I think the starting pitching's been pretty inconsistent. Lineup for me has been a huge disappointment. Um, but the bullpen has really the last 3 weeks like closed out a lot of these close games. You see how difficult it is. I was not watching Padres Cubs last night, but I did briefly tune into Dodgers Marlins, and you see like the Dodgers like, oh, here they come in the ninth, and the Giants just got through that really easily for a couple days. So I'd give all the credit to that group for the way this season has gone.
Yeah, I think there was legitimate reason for skepticism because, both of us hammered home this point that they just didn't invest a lot in their bullpen and it was going to come down to, you know, guys on minor league deals, kind of incumbents. And I think there was real reason for skepticism. But you see the way that some of these guys have really just come out and shoved to start the year, especially, Ryan Walker, for example, had blows a save in DC, comes right back, has two saves against the Dodgers, and just some numbers to provide some context. You mentioned the innings, but the 2.93 ERA, that's third in the majors, 3.89 FIP, that's 11th. Strikeout and walk ratio are both in the top 10. And this isn't a group that even has Jason Foley or Sam Henches yet. And so it's going to be an interesting conversation when those two guys come back. You mentioned they're about who they thought they were. It's the Dungy line. They are who we thought they were. Someone who has not kind of been who we thought he was going to be, and you mentioned him right now, is Rafael Devers. And obviously, we can point to short sample size and, Memorial Day, 40 days in, whatever you want to call it. It's always kind of like a good first marker of, this is where team's at. This is when you start asking some legitimate questions. And not quite there yet, but I wouldn't say the alarm bells are ringing, but they're kind of flickering a little bit. I think that they're starting to rotate just a little bit. And it's not just the numbers, because the numbers aren't great. It's the 216 batting average,
Yeah.
563 OPS. The walks are down, the strikeouts are up, the WAR isn't great. He's dropped to fifth in the lineup on Sunday, but it's also the bat speed hasn't fallen off a cliff, but like the competitive swings just have fallen off a cliff. And this is a very long-term commitment. And again, with a guy like this, I think you take months. I'm going to borrow a line that you said on Giant Stock. It's going to take months, if not years, to start having some true like alarm bells going off. But I don't know. Just what have your early impressions been of what you're seeing with Rafi? Because obviously, like their ceiling is contingent on how well he plays, and they've been 2 games below 500 with him not playing great. So you can only wonder like if this guy gets going. And especially
Yeah.
considering they're like second to last in runs scored, like where can this offense kind of go?
Yeah, I think the positive is like they've gotten, and I think Logan's been a little hard on himself, but they've gotten not what they expected out of Logan. And Rafi Devers has been one of the worst everyday players in the big leagues, just by WAR. So those are their two best players, or should be their two best players. So there's a lot of upside there. Now, to your point, like since you ran through all the advanced stuff, I'm just going to be the old guy on this podcast and say
Please do.
eye
Please
test.
do.
Like eye test has matched what the numbers say, right? Like it's you see the swings and you see people pumping fastballs at him and him just being consistently late on fastballs. And it does make you wonder a little bit. I know we've talked to Tony about this a lot, and he talks about, there's too much body in the swing and there's not using his hands. I think he compared him to Floyd Mayweather the other day. And so if you're trying to throw a punch, like you don't want to use your whole body. Um, so there's mechanical stuff going on. I always wonder at this point of the year and it's especially important in this case, there are just seasons where guys start to drop off. So, and I'm not saying we're there because he's not 34, but I just always kind of have that in the back of my head where it's like, I'll say, like, I had this last year with Willie defensively the first couple months. You're like, is this it for Willie Adames at shortstop? And then the second half, he's one of the best defensive shortstops in the big leagues. Um, he's again gotten off to, I think, a slow start defensively. But I think with the older guys, it's just kind of always in the back of my head of like, is the bat speed coming back? Is this just like the start of a different phase of Rafi's career? It shouldn't be. I don't think it is. But I do think with him, it's a little bit more of like the bigger the sample size gets, the more you just have to kind of think big picture about like, where's this headed with him? Like because they expected 5 or 6 more years of like prime Rafael Devers. So I guess that would be my concern watching is just like, where's the bat speed gone and will he get it back quickly? Again, it's been what 25 games for him. So small sample. We've seen what he's capable of last August, last September, or like when him and Willie got going at the same time. But it hasn't looked great early, and it has been just a little weird because you can see guys get into slumps different ways. You don't see a lot of guys like this get into a slump where it's just like, here's a fastball, here's a four seamer, and we don't think you can. Really, the only two like notable moments has gone the other way last week. But like, I'm still waiting to kind of see when's he going to turn on like a 94-mile-per-hour fastball and put it in the cove, and we haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, during the Saturday game in particular, I was talking to John Shea, and I think I had like a throwaway line to him where I was like, the Marlins should fine him for every non-fastball that he throws. And I tweeted it out like his first at bat of the day against Perez, it was five straight fastballs and he struck out swinging, and that's clearly gonna be the plan of attack with him going forward unless things change. And kind of the point about the eye test too. I know I rattled off all the numbers, but like you see, like like when he does have a competitive swing. I don't know if you feel the same way, but it does feel like it's not even a bat speed thing. It feels like he's just like the timing is right, but he's just like a millimeter away from like connecting. And then if he starts connecting on those balls, then it's the Rafi Devers we see. And I don't know if you saw the clip, but a lot of people started circulating that clip of when he hit the 103 off Aroldis Chapman, like when he was a
Yeah.
baby. And like that's what Rafi Devers can do when he's like really going good. And to the point that you made, he's super streaky as well. So I don't know. Would you be surprised if like we when the calendar flips to June and like the numbers are kind of there? Because again, like he's just 2, 3 weeks away from his numbers just kind of being where we've seen them be.
No, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And it's where we're in this in between where I think sometimes it's hard to talk about rationally because you can look big picture and go like, is the bat speed falling off a cliff? Like, is this the beginning of the end for him? Um, or you can just say it's been 25 games, and if this happened from June 15th until July 12th or whatever, like we wouldn't notice as much. We'd just be like, ah, it feels like Rafi's in a slump. So I always have a difficult time early in the year trying to figure out what's going on with guys because there is always that element of like sometimes you just look up and I've covered a lot of guys like this, where you just look up and go like, okay, it's something has changed for them physically. Like it's they're a year older. They're maybe, they don't have that trigger that they used to have. Uh, he's certainly not ever going to be the guy he was when he hit. I saw that home run on my timeline like six times. I don't know how these things happen where all of a sudden you just get fed the same thing over and over again. But like that was what was he like 22? So
I think he
that's
was like 20.
point. Yeah.
He was like a baby.
So that's a different level of athleticism, but yeah, it hasn't looked great, and I think he's one guy. I think I said this on the podcast. Like Philadelphia, great place to hit, and then Tampa, he's spent a ton of his career there. Should know that ballpark pretty well. So if he doesn't get going this week, yeah, you start getting into the 30 games, and you go, what's really going on here? Because then you need more of an explanation of what's happening.
Yeah, and I think we both kind of fall in the same boat here. And you mentioned it with Logan that the longer the track record, the more leeway you're willing to give a guy. And one example that comes to mind, it's obviously very different, but it's like Jose Ramirez in I think 2019. Like
Yeah,
first half, he just looked awful. Like pretty much since then, he's been the same guy. Now, granted, it's not there are different points in their careers. I think there's like a 5 year age gap between like what J Ram was at that time and now, but a little more leeway. And again, like if we get to Memorial Day, 40 games in, and the OPS still starts with a five, then that's when the big picture questions kind of are more appropriate to start getting
yeah.
into. I want to transition to another first baseman, albeit one we have not seen at the major league level this year, and that being Bryce Eldridge. And we know that he's going to be here at some point. I think that's still the general consensus. I think it would take a lot for him to not be here. The numbers with him with Sacramento have kind of been as expected: 305 batting average, 136 WRC plus, three homers. Strikeout and the whiff rate's still not great. He is swinging a bit less compared to last year. I have obviously hadn't have a chance to talk with him and dig into that, but we're not quite into May yet. We're still a couple of days away from May, but based off your gauge of where this Giants team's at, where he's at, do you think we see Bryce Eldridge in May?
Well, I think the most interesting thing about the Bryce Eldridge conversation is that their best hitter plays this position, and it's not Rafael Devers. It's their best hitter is Casey Schmidt. Like you can rattle off the advanced stuff, but it's like I think he still leads the team pretty easily in WRC plus. Like he leads the team in OPS. He has four home runs. eye test for me matches. I know you tried to show me the other day, like he almost had 6 home runs on the homestand, and I'm like, Justice, I have a 2-year-old at home. I'm not watching all Casey Schmidt's at bats from this homestand, but he
That's
did have a lot of
that's the
close
difference
calls,
between
right?
our point in our careers. I do not have the 2-year-old at home, so I had
It
the
was like a
time for
Saturday
that.
afternoon, and you're like, check this out. Look at all these close calls from Casey Schmidt. And I'm like, I'm gonna go see my son before he goes to sleep. But I didn't watch him. Like he did have what was it, like 6 balls he found that were
There was two that died at the warning track against the Marlins and the Dodgers, and there was like one more that was like this shy of the warning track. So he could like we could easily have like 7 Casey Schmidt homers right
and
now.
there was one that was foul too. That was
Yeah.
so my point is like there's no reason to rush Bryce right now. And he plays 2 positions. He only plays 2 positions. He's not going to play outfield this year. Casey's has not been asked to get reps in the outfield. So there are ways you can move around this. Like you can, I just don't think they're not going to move Arias off second base. He's played some left field in the past. They're not going to make that move. So there's just not a spot for Bryce right now, which I think is fine. And like the numbers that you brought up, the strikeout rate's still pretty high. And the other thing I'd like to see is I'd like to see more home runs. Like this is supposed to be, he's been great. He's done everything he had to do in AAA, but I think the Giants and um, Tony said this at the end of camp, like he wants to see a little bit more damage. And what they're talking about is they'd like to see more home runs. Like it's for a guy to get that call where he comes up here and you expect him to be a 30 home run hitter, you want him to show that he's a 30, 40 home run hitter in AAA. So right now he's ironically very similar to I think Brandon Belt, where he's showing a really good eye um, at the plate at least. Like I think the walk rate is up. The walk rate was up in spring training, and we see a lot of doubles. We see a lot of hard hit balls. They haven't seen like the streak of like, hey, he hit 4 homers in a week in AAA. Like he really started to get going. So I think that's one thing they're waiting for. But I really just think the Casey part of this is important and realizing that like there's not an easy spot for Bryce right now. And he plays first base, but Rafi Devers is going to play through this.
Yeah, and the thing with Casey in particular, I remember he had a really rough Yankee series, and because he was playing those games at first base, because Rafi was dealing with a hamstring injury, I think a lot of people just in their heads were like, "Oh, like what's going on here? Like, why is Casey Schmidt getting so much playing time?" But again, this is the point you made in the podcast: is that Casey Schmidt was going to get a lot of playing time, and it's again, it's been like super weird, like roster fit functionally because his best position is third base. He is not going to be the starting third baseman anytime
Yeah.
soon. Um, Me and you were both kind of in the same camp of like, why do they necessarily need to upgrade second base? Because you got Casey Schmidt and Luis Arias. I did write, I'm going to shamelessly plug the story that I did about him with kind of the art of the take. Go check that out. But, Arias has played very well, even with some, legitimate questions regarding, the defense, the bat to ball stuff. But it is kind of interesting spot because, like you mentioned, they don't really need to, rush Eldridge to the majors. And to your point, like even with the average, like it's a really good looking slash line, but he hasn't really forced the issue in the way that you would want someone to force the issue. Like if it was like 300, but he had 9 homers, then I think that's
Yeah.
we're kind of having a different conversation here. But again, we're gonna see him at some point in the majors. Is it May? Is it June? Is it whenever? Who's to say? So
Let me just say, I think this is
go
best
ahead.
case scenario because they want Bryce to be like 100% ready when he gets that call. They don't ever want to send him back down. So this is best case scenario, I think, because you have a guy who is giving you that production in that spot. And you have that, and you're also letting Bryce play he's playing every single day. Like he's not taking days off. He's playing 6 days a week there in AAA. He's getting a ton of reps. So I think it's worked out about as well as they could have imagined at the start of the year. And we'll see him at some point this year. He's been very, very good for a 21-year-old in that league. Um, there's a step for him to take.
So you're telling me that a 21-year-old Major League Baseball or player is not a fully developed product? Is that what you're telling me, Pavs?
Yeah. And people just, I think we've made this point a lot, and I hope people just have a full understanding of this. Like, this is one you cannot screw up, and just like make sure he's ready, make sure the environment is right. And one thing maybe you had this conversation with Giants people maybe about 2, 3 weeks ago. I know I started to ask the Bryce question, and one thing I heard was there was a little bit of wariness of like, you want to call him up when the rest of the team's slumping. and be like, hey, 21-year-old, come and save us. Like that's a really tough spot to put him in. So yeah, I think this has worked out very well for them.
Yeah, I remember one of the topics when they added Rise, they add Bader's. Now, whenever he gets into this lineup, there's not going to necessarily be that pressure. But to your point, like if the rest of the offense is slumping, like it's going to be like whether it's fair or not, a lot of this fan base is going to say, "Hey, come save us," and
Yeah,
that's kind of going to be the natural, you know, point. And if he hits, then sure. But if he slumps, then it's kind of going to be like, "Hey, Bryce, you were supposed to do X, Y, and Z."
yeah.
So, like both of us said, we're going to see him at some point in the majors. When that point comes, that is to be determined. So talked about Bryce, talked about Devers, talked about the bullpen. Paz, I'm going to turn it over to you. What are some other parts of this first month of the season that have really caught your attention for the better, for the worse, for the middle, whatever you want to call it?
Well, I think Tony's going to be a conversation point every single day. And, early on, I know there was I heard a couple times from people who are like, why do you write about this specific like bullpen management move or this or that? And I'm like, he's the biggest story of this season. Like we might forget it at times because other stuff happens, but the biggest story is Tony Vitello. And I think there were a few stumbles early, and I think he's actually done a really nice job overall in his first month. The bullpen management has been better than I expected. He, I would play Christian Koss a little bit more, just to be fair to him. But in general, I think he's done a pretty good job. I think he's been pretty reactive of like I'm curious to see what the lineup looks like on Tuesday and what he does with Jung Hoo and things like that. But um, I think he's pushed some good buttons early on, and so that's one thing that stands out with Tony. What else? What else? Oh, someone asked me this morning on Twitter. They sent me a mailbag question for the pod. They're like, "Why aren't they running?" And I'm like, "Well, I think we have this conversation every year. They're just not. This is not a roster. No matter how many different front office people, how many coaches, how many first base coaches, how many running guys you bring in, like this roster is not built for it, which is disappointing because they're still not there. Maybe we have to wait for Joshua to get here, and that'll finally be what changes it.
Johnny
But
Level.
yeah, that has stood out to me as well, that this is still pretty similar to where we've seen in the past, where the athleticism's not there.
Yeah, that's something I remember last year where like I think Jung Hoo had like 3 steals in April, and I was kind of like, oh, like is this finally going to happen? Because he didn't really do it that much in 2024, and then it was kind of returned to norm. And you can kind of say that about the majority of this team. I will say though, Luis Arias, four
Yeah,
steals on 4 attempts. His career high last year was 11. But it is interesting now because of in the pitch clock era and with the new rules that with the pickoff rule, they're not really that new anymore. Um, but we saw Juan Soto last year almost have a 40-40 season, and he's like first percentile sprint speed. So, yeah, this team isn't like you look up and down this lineup, like obviously Rafi Devers is not going to give you anything steals wise. Like Patrick Bailey might every once in a while steal one, but you look at the roster and there are guys with like decent athleticism, like Jung Hoo, Elliott, Matt Chapman, Willie Adames. Like you would think like between those guys, like 10 steals at the minimum kind of shouldn't be that big of an ask, especially because of the ways that you can game it now. But I don't know. I just don't. It's one of those things where it's like teams have like different identities, and like I just don't identify the Giants as a team that's going to run going forward. And to the point about Christian Koss, I was kind of joking about this, but I did look at the math. I was kind of wondering like how many more plate appearances would Devers have to take, and how few would Koss have to take for the number per plate appearances to match up? And it's like it's getting with every passing day that Koss doesn't play, it's getting like instrumentally close. I think we could Tony could probably find a couple more spots to get Koss in line because I know he did play on Sunday, but it kind of feels like 5 days will go by and we just don't see him at all.
I think more than five. So yeah, that'd be my one quibble with him a little bit is I would have used the bench a little bit more. But he's also I've asked this question. I know he's trying to pay respect to his veterans. To your point about the stolen bases, Luis Arias has four, Patrick Bailey has two, Casey Schmidt has one, and Jared Oliva has one. So the entire rest of this roster, which look, they're not burners, but like Matt Chapman's a pretty good base runner. Elliot Ramos is a good athlete. Bader was hurt. Jungkook Lee hasn't run at all. He's actually not as fast as people think. But yeah, it is it just stood out to me because it is a conversation that I think like three off seasons in a row we had with Farhan. And then like Buster comes in and he's like, I want to be more like how we used to be. And Bob Melvin comes in and he's like, stolen base, old school baseball. And then this new staff comes in, and I think we talked to Tony in the spring about being more aggressive, and they have new base running coaches and some new players. And it's like, nope, same old Giants, going to be 29th or 30th in stolen bases.
29th or 30th or stolen bases indeed. Kind of want to circle back to Tony before we wrap up here, but to your point, he did have a couple stumbles early on, like after the second game of the season when they get shut out back-to-back games, putting it on his shoulders, and like Robbie Ray and Elliot Ramos are like,
Yeah.
yeah, like we appreciate it, but like we're fine, like we're major leaguers. There's probably a couple other things just over this first months that that they're not coming to mind, but I think overall, like I think it is easy for us, to your point, like kind of forget that this is going to be the story of the season. But I think the last maybe like week and a half, 2 weeks, it kind of has been a little easy to forget because he's kind of just acclimated to being a major league manager, and he's deployed the bullpen well. He hasn't had, I guess, as many like super viral clips. I think his answers are still pretty lengthy. Like the post game can still go lengthy, but I think he's as he learns this team, I think they're getting a little more concise, or getting a little more informative, and you know the. I think there is just going to still be that lingering question of just how is this going to go, because it's an experiment. This is something that's never been done, but I think the more we've gotten into this season, I don't know if this is the gauge you've gotten, but it just feels like he's acclimated pretty well to the major league job. And I think the one point that I kind of want to hammer home is that the guy knows ball. Like
Yeah.
I think that was never a concern, but I think a lot of people were like, "What does he know about the major league game?" Like it's baseball's baseball. It's just all the other ancillary stuff that comes with it, and there is a lot of other ancillary stuff that comes with this role.
He knows baseball and he works really hard. I don't know if there's a manager in the game right now who loves baseball more than Tony does. We're around him a lot and we see just, he has like 90 free seconds and he's like, I'm going to play catch with Jace Tingler just because I get to play catch on a big league field. Or I'm going to go stand in against, two of my Willie Adames and Matt Chapman are getting their arms loose. I'm going to go pretend to be a left-handed hitter and give him a little like fake strike zone. Um, yeah, he loves baseball. I think he's the ultimate like base. This is like a term of endearment, but like baseball rat. He's this is his entire life. We asked him what he did on the off day, and he's like, I was at the ballpark. So now he did sneak into Chappelle later that night, but like for the most part at the ballpark. So yeah, I think there's a lot of that coming through, and um, I can't think of too many things. Like when you talk about like what has Tony messed up, and if you're just talking about that as any manager, like what has this guy done that I disagree with? Like there's been a couple times where they threw Baraki out there against righties or got beat in that situation. I would have played the bench a little bit more. But I can't think of a whole lot that you look at and go, well, that was a rookie manager. So, yeah, I think it's been pretty impressive so far. My question is going to be over the course of 162, and it's not. My question is, I think everyone asked the wrong question in the offseason. It was like, how's Tony going to get through 162? I don't think that's a question. Like, he has the energy for this. He has the passion for it. My question is going to be like, how does he guide a roster through 162? And one thing we've seen is like he's very aggressive with his starting pitchers. He leaves them out there. Um, they're pretty regularly going early in the year at or over 100 pitches. Landon's going deeper than he ever really has before. He's stretched Robbie out a little bit. Logan's doing what he does. But that would be my question is like over 162, does he look up in like July or August is like, I gas some of these guys out a little bit. But that's what your depth is for. And I think he's trying to win every game. And so, yeah, nothing really stands out from that perspective. I think what stands out to me most about Tony is the conversations about Tony. And I know I said like he's going to be a big talking point, but it seems like people are very eager one way or the other to, we see the tweets, we see the clips from
We
other
do see
shows.
him.
We see the clips people send out. It seems like people are very eager just to jump on every single opportunity they have to have a big moment out of everything. And I'm like, he's just kind of been pretty normal day to day. Like he gives very long answers, but other than that, like if you didn't know any better, you'd think this guy was a bench coach for the last 5 years in Atlanta or something. And here he comes and he gets a shot.
I'm gonna put you on the spot here. What's your favorite quote that he's fired off since he took the job? There's one that comes to mind instantly.
There's one he said in spring training, but it was off the record and it was a group setting, which I think maybe you remember.
That's the one
But
I'm thinking of.
I don't know that it was ever written that. It's not anything crazy, but it was just a funny quote. Um, I think my favorite moment was probably the funniest for me was probably when he mentioned Tiger Woods and then caught himself right
Yeah,
away and was like, "Oops, probably not the."
not the
But
best time.
Tony's very self-aware about this. He rambles like he just goes, and you never know where it's going to go. And I'm watching even I didn't cover Sunday's game, but I'm watching post game and just like a little straight shot at Drew Gilbert, like just just decided to take a shot at him. So, yeah, I think they've been interesting post games. I'll say that. And we've cut down from 16 minutes to like 8. So I think everyone all involved has we've adjusted.
Yeah, and I will say too, just because he mentions something that's kind of quirky does not necessarily mean it's gonna be like the next big like whoa moment. Like sometimes he just says stuff. Not everything's got to be a soundbite. I also want to say so of the managers that you've covered, has anyone hit more fungos than him? Because I can't imagine that Bochy was getting after it like the way that Tony is.
So I asked Bochy this actually in spring training, and he said he was like kind of taken aback. He's like, "No, I did. I just you got me when I was like 60." So he's like, "No, early Bochy in San Diego." He's like, "I was doing all this stuff." But I've since then I've covered Bochy and Gabe Kapler, Gabe would throw BP every once in a while, but was not hitting fungos as much, and Bob Melvin, who was again like Bob was hitting those fungos 30 years ago, probably. So, yeah, it's the young energy. I think you see that everywhere. So I have no doubt his battery's going to stay up during the course of the year, and he's going to be this way after games and before games and all that. Which, by the way, we love. Like it's lengthy sometimes, but I think it's entertaining. And again, he's very self-aware about like, yeah, my favorite, I guess my when you ask like what's funny, I there's a lot of quiet like things at the end of answers where he goes like I ran out the clock on that one, or
Yeah,
like I don't know if I answered your question at all after 2.5 minutes of speaking. Like those are the ones that always stick out to me.
for sure. And I was kind of curious, like, was he consistently gonna have like these lengthy answers, like as we got into the season? And to your point, he has not slowed down at all. So we'll see what the answers are like in August. But to this point, he has not slowed down at all. Last thing I want to leave you with, what do you want to fight me on next? What's the next sabermetric battle that we're gonna fight?
I'm not trying to be the boomer fighting. I just saw a tweet about Mason Miller's negative FIP and was like, this is yeah, I think that'd be my main one. I still think I'm right on both of these, which is my other one is when you
I
see those
disagree.
graphics with all red and it's like, look at this guy, and it's like, oh, he gave it 4 runs. So
Yeah, the
I
TJ
saw one
that, that one, yeah, I agree with that one.
well, I saw one the other day of Tyler Mahle after the Dodgers start, which was like nothing here is really impressive, but pitched really well against the Dodgers. And I'm like, okay, thank you for the contribution to our conversation about Tyler Mahle. So I don't. We'll find something over the course of the year.
We'll for sure find something over the course of your last actual real question. I'm obviously in Philly right now. Favorite cheesesteak in Philly?
Hmm.
And you can't
The
say the
mini,
visiting clubhouse.
can I say the mini cheesesteaks in the press box? Because you can pop like 50 of those.
Thats
Those, I
a
think,
that's
I
that's a
think,
fair one. We'll take
I
it.
think they're from like Trader Joe's actually. But favorite cheesesteak. There's a place I'm horrible with names. There's a place outside of the city where I went one time. Um, they actually, this is gonna sound great. They actually have a really good cheesesteak at the ballpark.
They
So
do.
it's if you go out to center field, I don't remember the name of the place, but it's really good.
I think it's called like Chicky and Pete's,
Something
something like
else.
that.
It's
Yeah,
something.
something like
There's
that.
something out there, but there's a good cheesesteak at the ballpark. I've done it a couple times, and they have it in the press box for us usually once a series.
Top three press dining in baseball.
Top one, and it's not even close.
Top one, and it's not
It's
even
number
close.
one. It's always been number one. It is number one. It is cheaper than a lot of the other ones, including one that we go to regularly. It's number one.
Might have to do my own edition of Alex seats when I'm out there for the press box. But Alex, it was a lot of fun. Thank you for taking the time as always. And next time I'm in the press box, I will have a chocolate old fashioned for you.
Oh, okay. Say hi to Frank, the ice cream guy for me.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Alex. I'm now joined by one of the two beat reporters that cover the Philadelphia Phillies for The Athletic. But before that, she was an intern at the San Francisco Chronicle, where we had an opportunity to chronicle the A's final season in Oakland. Charlotte Varnes, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here amid all the chaos happening in Philly today.
Oh, Charlotte, we got so much to talk about. Like this is what I kind of asked you like when I was preparing for this, I was like, do you think something's gonna happen? Like when should we do this? Because I originally pitched Monday and you were like, probably Monday might not be a good time. And I wake up to the news that Rob Thomson is not the manager. Don Mattingly is now the acting manager. I have a script for for people watching. It's right here. This is what I wrote last night on the plane. We're gonna kind of ad lib this. So Charlotte, just take us through everything that's happening with the Phillies right now. Why this was the time for him to go, why Don Mattingly was the choice, and just where they go from here.
Yeah, I mean, the Phillies obviously just lost 10 games in a row. I was present, I think, for about like seven or eight of them. And I mean, it's there's trouble on all fronts. The offense just looks totally lifeless, which feels very weird after watching them last year. It's the same core group of players, and all of a sudden they are just not hitting. The guys who should be hitting at the top of the lineup have struggled a little bit, although Schwarber and Harper have looked all right. Then you don't, Alec Boehm is literally the worst qualified hitter in baseball right now. Bryson Stott has looked really bad. So when you don't have the guys at the top of the lineup are not at their best, you don't have the guys at the bottom of the lineup really helping them. So there's that. There's the starting pitching, which has had horrible, horrible BABIP luck. I mean, you can't chalk everything up to luck, obviously, but Aaron Nola has just not looked great. Zach Wheeler looked promising in his first outing. Jesus Luzardo has the worst ERA among all starting pitchers right now. Like it's everything's gone wrong on that end. And then you add in the bullpen where Juan Duran is out. You have a couple more injuries. The guys who were pretty good last year. Tanner Banks has not been great to start the year. Tim Meza looked really good at the beginning of the season, has been pretty bad. So there's sort of trouble all over. I didn't even mention the defense. Defense has not looked good. You're just having this perfect storm of issues. And someone was going to have to take the fall for that. And it ended up being Rob. You can argue that it was not Rob's fault. He can't make the hitters hit. Obviously, the Phillies felt like they needed to make a change, so they chose Rob. I mean, the hitting coach could have been under consideration as well. They have just been not hitting lefties at all. That it's been a real problem this year. They're 0 and 10 against lefty starters. They're hitting like I don't know the exact number, but I want to say their OPS is like 500 or less against lefties right now. It's pretty bad. It's trouble all over. And as for the interim they chose, I can't speak to why they chose Don because Dusty Wathan, third base coach, obviously would have been a great decision as well. He's also been interviewed for manager jobs in the past. So that's a question I have today is why they chose Don, especially with his relationship with GM Preston Mattingly. That'll be really interesting to cover. But yeah, I don't know where things go from here. I think they feel like this is salvageable, especially with how strong this core group was last season. But they've dug themselves a really big hole. It feels very hard to imagine them playing at the clip they need to just dominate the rest of the season. But I don't know. We'll see where things go from here.
They can't hit, they can't starting pitch, they can't bullpen pitch, they can't play defense. They're 9 and 19. They fired their manager. But aside from that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play?
Yeah.
It's yeah, like I didn't think you were exaggerating, but like I dug into the numbers last night and I was just like, oh my, like they're second to the second fewest runs in the majors, like third highest ERA, and then like even if you break it into starting pitching and bullpen, it's just all bad. I'm pretty sure I think I saw that this is like the first manager GM pairing that is also father and son, which I guess that's like a kind of cool side note in all this, although it does take kind of like a perfect storm of things of not great things happening for this to happen.
Yeah.
But um, naturally, the question that I do want to ask from here is Alex Cora was fired, I think 2 days ago at this point. Like, are you aware if there was any conversations with bringing in Cora as the manager? Was it too soon? Like, do you like was that a consideration as well?
Yeah, the Athletic reported, and I think Bob Nightingale had it first, that they talked to Cora and essentially offered him the job first, and he chose to spend time with his family rather than bringing him in. And I feel like bringing an external hire at this point of the season would be a little difficult as well. I don't know. It seems like Cora might be willing to sit out the 2026 season, and then obviously there's going to be a ton of interest in him this winter. But I mean, it's well known he and Dave have super tight relationship, so he might have declined right now. But I feel like that doesn't put an end to the speculation that maybe he manages the Phillies in the future.
How do you think he would fit, hypothetically as a manager for this? Like, assuming like the majority of this core is going to be back for 2027, and who's to say what this team looks like in 2027? I know we're talking about the present, but you mentioned the relationship that he has with Dave Dombrowski. Just how do you think he would fit as the manager of this team if that was to, come together at some point?
Yeah, I mean, he obviously knows how to manage superstars. He did that the year the Red Sox won the World Series. I feel like he'd be really good on that front. He's managed Kyle Schwarber as well. I think that's really helpful. But I think for me, like the Phillies have really valued continuity during this run. I mean, very, very few coaches have departed. They made like one coaching change this winter, basically. So I think like I'm curious how this core group responds to the coaching group that's been together since this 2022 run maybe being broken up this winter and the coaches going elsewhere. So I think that's my big question mark. But I feel like Alex Cora would be a good fit in terms of how he's been able to manage and deal with superstars because this roster has a lot of them. And that's not an easy thing to be doing, dealing with a lot of superstars and managing personalities on top of making lineup decisions. But I feel like he's done that in the past, and that could bode well for him being in Philly.
It's interesting because the last two times that the Phillies have fired a manager, it's come in the middle of the season, and naturally, the results are the results, and it's not unheard of for a decision of this magnitude to spark a team. But, as you're kind of digesting this, like, one, did you think that this is the move that was going to be making? Two, like, do you think that, with this core group of guys in particular, like, this was kind of the spark they needed? Or is it kind of a little bit of a question mark on your end of like, why was Rob kind of the guy to go?
I think it's a question mark. I think I came into Monday feeling like they were going to make a decision. I didn't know if it was going to be Rob or it was going to be Kevin Long, the hitting coach. I think Kevin Long, the hitting coach, is a little obviously they could have made the decision to fire him, but he has very good relationships with Schwarber, Turner, and Harper, all predating the time of the Phillies. I mean, Kevin Long, like, you give him a lot of credit. He's like set Schwarber on the path of becoming one of the best left on left hitters in baseball. You can argue that Schwarber may not have had the year he had last year without Kevin Long. So I think that would be a very hard decision to make in season. I think Rob just ended up taking the fall for what's been happening so far. I think he, again, with the continuity, I think they also really valued Rob. He's just a very steady hand, a steady presence. And I think you can say that Don will be the same way. Dusty, if they had elevated him, will be the same way. And Dusty's now the bench coach, so he's going to have more of a say as well. I think this whole group just sort of has the steady hand. And to me, I think that's why it's sort of a question mark going forward because yeah, maybe it is a spark that you fire the manager and like really like light a fire under the players, but like uh, at the same time, you can't. I really have a hard time seeing that Dusty or Dawn is going to operate differently than Rob did. They're all very steady presences, have been in the game a very long time. I don't know how much this move is going to change things unless it serves as a motivator for the players, but that's TBD.
So usually the question that I ask different beat reporters at the very end of the segment is what's the thing you're most curious about with your team? So I'm gonna ask that question now.
Mhm.
Just with this fire, like, with the coaching staff being shaken up a little bit, what are you most curious about like going forward? Because I would imagine there's a lot of different angles. Like obviously, like there's the element of how do the Phillies perform going forward? Like, is that it? Or is there like a specific element of this new dynamic that you're curious to see unfold over the course of the season?
Yeah, I mean I'm curious to get to know Don Mattingly. I feel like he's described himself in the past as really like a servant, and I feel like you can see that in the way he acts. Like he You don't really see him a lot other than when he's working on the field. He kind of sticks to himself, and obviously we're going to be engaging with him twice a day now, and he obviously has been a manager in the past. So I'm curious to like get to know Don and see how his leadership sort of changes things, if at all. And I mean, yeah, in general, I'm just curious how they respond to this because I feel like I don't know. I think the question is this 2022 or is this 2012? And Jason Stark just wrote a column on this for The Athletic. And I mean, 2022, this sort of change in May ended up propelling the Phillies to a World Series run. But you can argue the Phillies right now have dug themselves a deeper hole than they were in at that time. And circumstances are different in that I think Joe Girardi and Rob Thomson had very different styles of management, whereas I don't think Don Mattingly is that different from what Rob offered. So I think, yeah, I think that's the big question is this the end for this core? Is this window closing, which just feels sort of incomprehensible given the extensions they signed this winter and given how well some of these guys played last year? Or is this going to light a fire under them? I think that is the big question going forward.
Maybe that's the winning formula. Maybe the formula is just fire the manager and you go to a World Series after that. Who's to say?
Same.
And with Don Mattingly in particular, Giants fans will know this is far from his first game managing against the San Francisco Giants, obviously the former manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, in addition to the Miami Marlins as well. Let's get into the team itself, because if the opposite was true, if the Phillies were 19-9, Rob Thompson would still have a job. And you mentioned everything that's kind of going on with this team, but the one part that's super confounding with me is the pitching, because mainly from the perspective that you mentioned the BABIP luck. I think they have the highest BABIP in the majors. And, just to rattle off some numbers for the audience, they're the third worst ERA in baseball. It's 5.13. The 390 FIP is 20th. But they're also eighth in strikeout to walk ratio. And when you look at some of the guys on this staff, like, yes, they lost Ranger Suarez, but you also have Jesus Luzardo, Christopher Sanchez, and Andrew Painter slated for this series. Luzardo in particular, he has a 6.91 ERA, but a 3.24 FIP, a 395 BABIP. Just what have you made of this starting core in particular? Because it does seem they're nowhere near to what their ceiling could be as a group.
Yeah. It it's been pretty puzzling. I just think Sanchez and Luzardo especially both were given even further. Sanchez was further extended over the winter. Luzardo got his extension. I mean, they're not pitching near their potential, and it feels very weird to say that about Christopher Sanchez. I've said this to several people. It's like it feels very weird to be like, this is not quite what Christopher Sanchez could be doing because he's been really good. He only really got knocked around last game against the Cubs. He let up, I think his last two previous two outings were both against the Cubs, and they kind of knocked him around a little bit. And it, but it just the stuff has not felt as sharp as it's been in the past. The changeup is getting hit a little bit more. Velo is down like minimally on his sinker. I don't even know if that's enough to like sort of excuse what's been happening. And Luzardo, like I don't know. Luzardo has shown like he earlier in the season, 11 strikeouts against the Rockies in Colorado and 6 2/3. The Phillies are still chasing that. To me, that's one of the biggest things with the Phillies is like they haven't had anyone go 7 innings this season. That 6 2/3 was the highest. And it's just like when you already have a tax bullpen, it's not good. So I don't know. I'm curious. Luzardo's a very emotional guy. I know last year he sort of got the best of him in parts of the second half of the season. I remember at the time he was like, I just decided I'm done with that. I'm not going to let it affect me anymore. And watching him pitch, it sort of feels like you see that emotion. Like he is always, last summer, he had some problems out of the stretch. And when you watch him this year, he sort of had, it's looked like the same issues in terms of how he's been able to handle it and just remain composed at that time. So to me, that's interesting to see how he's able to come out of that again. And yeah, Andrew Painter is someone I've written about a lot because he was in AAA last year. I mean, I don't know, you could argue that's part of the reason Rob got fired. He left Painter in on Sunday. Yeah, it was Sunday. And he just got totally knocked around by the Braves, even though it could have been the best outing of his young career. And he instead left him in, and Michael Harris just got a hit off him, and it totally turned the tide of the game. And yeah, so I have a lot of questions about the rotation because I think these are like really great pitchers. They're not pitching to their potential, which is just it's been really weird to watch. Even Nola, like you can argue no, Aaron Nola is not what he once was, but I just is he this bad? I don't think he is.
One guy that the Giants aren't going to see this series and that the Phillies haven't seen this year at all is Zach Wheeler. Just what's the latest on him as he's recovering from, I'm forgetting, what was his injury again? It's escaping me off the top of my head.
He had vascular thoracic outlet syndrome. So if there's a good TOS, he had the good TOS, meaning not the nerve kind. So yeah, he had his rib removed last September, and AAA outings and AA were like all right. Like he had some good ones. Velocity was just not there. And then all of a sudden he's like basically ripping 95 against the Braves on Saturday, which was super promising. But like knowing Zach, I think he left a little bit in the tank during those minor league outings. Yeah, he looked really good. Like the Phillies finally won that game. Of course, it was Zach Wheeler who snapped them out of the 10-game losing streak. But yeah, I mean, he's not quite what he once was. I think he could definitely still get there, but it was really promising what he showed on Saturday.
You mentioned Alec Boehm, and obviously the offense is what the offense is. And when it comes to personal lives, like I typically try to stay away from that territory. Like it's personal for a reason, but I think it's a little hard to just completely cast that off to the side given the public nature of what's happening. And I think you had mentioned there's kind of new developments in what is happening with his parents. Just what's the latest on? Well, actually, can you just provide like the larger context of what has happened and maybe what is the latest on that situation with his parents?
Yeah, on March 25th, so right before opening day, Alex sued his parents for basically accusing them of financial mismanagement, saying that he alleged that they'd taken some money from him over the years, mismanaged his accounts, etc. And so the news breaks during the game on opening day
During
because
the game?
yeah, it was pretty crazy because the Inquirer had obviously like newspapers have court reporters who their whole job is to look at stuff, and they'd found it was not published until during the game. And yeah, it things have sort of unfolded from there. Basically, his Alec asked for his legal team asked for an injunction a few weeks ago, basically to um get his parents to give $528,000 back to him, or it might be 518. It's like over 500K that they had taken that Alec is accusing them of using for a legal war chest. And since then, the latest developments were a couple days ago, or yesterday, his parents filed some just official stuff with the court, just essentially like saying they oppose the injunction and they're trying to get the dispute moved to arbitration court in Florida because a lot of this has to do with LLCs they founded on Alec's behalf. And in the operating agreements of those LLCs, it allegedly says that this needs to be handled in arbitration court. Alec and his legal team allege that he was not quite aware of what he was signing when he signed those operating agreements. So there's sort of that dispute. But essentially, the parents' legal team is saying that Pennsylvania is not the right venue for this just because Alec is a Florida resident. His parents were Nebraska residents, now Florida residents. Like they're just saying Pennsylvania is not the right place. So it's a lot of legalese, but ultimately is a very sad situation. I mean, lawyers always say you never want to see the same last name versus each other in court. So yeah, it's hard to say how much it's affecting him on the field. Like I said before, he's the worst qualified hitter in baseball right now. Um, but yeah, it's people around him on the team. Like the hitting coach told me last week, he's like, Alec has really kept his wits about him. Rob, before he was fired, was like, in the past, you'd see Alec get really frustrated. We're not really seeing that at this moment in time. Like he's a guy who's like really worn his heart on his sleeve, and he's not doing that right now. And I mean, for better or for worse with everything going on in his life. But yeah, that's sort of been going on in the background, and it's for this to drop yesterday. As soon as I saw it, I was like, if we write something on this right now, someone's gonna get fired, and then we're all gonna have all of this happening at the same time, and that has happened. It's just yeah, it's a sad situation.
Sad situation indeed, and obviously just hoping the best for Alec. It's obviously just not a fun situation to deal with. Charlotte, I think we need to talk about something positive. It's a lot of negativity happening in Philadelphia right now. So I'm gonna point. You mentioned Andrew Painter. I also want to give a kind of bring Justin Crawford into this. Obviously, the son of Carl Crawford. They were two guys that really impressed me during when the Giants, or not the Giants, when the Phillies rather were in San Francisco. Painter didn't have the greatest outing in the world, but you can kind of see the glimpses of what he could do. Same thing with Justin Crawford. Just what have your impressions been of those two going forward, and maybe how their timeline's a little different, considering this is a veteran core, but maybe how they can inject some maybe, much needed young, life into this team.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, talk about that outing in San Francisco. It's almost like a little bit similar to what you did in Atlanta, where I think Rob was trying to sort of give him the opportunity to learn. And unfortunately, his matters have spiraled for the Phillies. So giving him those opportunities to learn just have not been great for the team amid everything else going on. But yeah, I mean, he is a guy who, like, he was probably the top pitching prospect in the sport like 4 years ago. And he went through a really, really hard year at AAA last year. Things spiraled. He like could not really throw his changeup the whole year. He was frustrated, and it's looked a lot better in the majors. I mean, the fact he's really only getting knocked around like a later in outings. He's looked really good so far. And I feel very, I don't know. I think people are too hard on him. I think, well, this is a really tough market to play in A. The circumstances are really tough B. But I don't know. I think there are a lot of fans who have like sometimes been, I'm out on Andrew Painter. And I'm like, I totally disagree with that because he's a rookie. Like, not everyone's going to be Paul Skeens and light the world on fire. The vast majority of people are not Paul Skeens. And I think the way Painter's been talked about over the years, people were sort of expecting that right away. And I mean, like his debut was phenomenal. I think he struck out 7 or 8. Like it was a great game. He showed glimpses of that again. I think people just need to have a little more patience, but during a tough time, it can be easy to point fingers at him as well. And I mean, Justin's really fun to watch play. I mean, he hits the ball on the ground a lot, but he's just been, I think, very helpful at the bottom of the lineup. I feel like he's in a spark and been helpful with getting on base. And yeah, he has not stolen a lot of bases. I want to say he's only stolen 2 so far, and he stole like a lot in the minors last year. So I think like that's been a question for me is how much they're giving him the green light when you have guys like Turner and Schwarber, et cetera, hitting behind him. Yeah, so I've been pleasantly surprised by what I've seen from Justin so far because I think a lot of people coming into the season were like, we don't know how this is gonna go because like he is like a big BABIP guy, but insane BABIP numbers last year, but it's worked so far.
Charlotte, last question I want to leave you with. What do you miss most about the Bay?
Oh, what do I miss? I miss the views. Oh my God, I was talking to someone in the Phillies last week. We were like talking about best cities to run in, and you'll get this as a runner. And someone they were like
Hmm.
ranking San Francisco low, and I'm like, you've got to
Mm-mm.
go. I'm like, if you're staying in San Francisco, you've got to go. Just go to the Presidio, like Uber there and run there. And they like person was like complaining to me about like running near the stadium, and I'm like, that also is like not that bad. Like running on the Embarcadero is like fine,
It's
but I'm like.
beautiful.
I know. I'm like, why are you complaining? But yeah, I think the views. I love Philly. We don't have that natural beauty here though.
Yeah, I'm not rattling off a run today. I gotta finish
Yeah.
recording this and editing this, but I did just buy some Nike Pegasus, and I will be breaking them out on the Rocky Steps. I'm gonna have my
Yeah.
moment. But as far as like, well, actually, I think Jordan Bastian would have something to say about that because he's ran all over this city.
Oh my
Uh,
God, yeah, he was just here. I should have asked him.
he was running by like some park, and I'm like, dude, where are you? Like, that's nowhere near the city. He's like 8 miles out. I'm
Oh,
sure we'll have him on the podcast at some point. But Charlotte, this is a lot of fun. I'll see you in the press box in a couple hours. Where can we find your work?
you can find me at theathletic.com. And I also have my own podcast called Down on the Farm, which is about Phillies prospects.
Check out The Athletic. Check out Down on the Farm. Charlotte, this is a lot of fun. See you in a couple.
Yep, see you soon.